Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today I've got a special guest coming to us from Melbourne, and that's Drew. How you going, mate?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Nugget. Yourself?
Very well, mate. And I wanted to get you on because of this article and research you've been doing into the impact of social media. So for those that aren't familiar with it, what are those big issues and what led you down this rabbit hole to get so interested in this topic?
Yeah, so I guess what kicked it off, Nugget, is the amount of different articles I've read over the last 12 months with the amount of time people spend on their phones. For me, it's something I've become conscious of about 6 months ago. I downloaded an app called Moment after reading an article about it. And after using the app for a week, it sort of broke down how much time I was spending, one on my phone, but how it broke down across different apps. And I guess social media ones in particular, the amount of time that I was spending on those. I think originally it was like 2.5 hours a day, which if you times that by 7 days a week, you're soon making a lot of time spent each week on the phone. So just spending that week seeing the data that come out as to what I was using, the following weeks I was just getting down more and more time, the more and more conscious I was getting about it, to a stage where I'm spending about an hour 10 on the phone each day, which could be anything from messages, calls, anything else that gets done on there. But as I said, articles I've been reading now saying Australians and millennials in particular are spending anywhere between 2 and 4 hours a day on their phone, which, yeah, when you put that into some terms of how much that is per year, which we can go into later on, it's a significant amount of time. And I guess why that sort of tickled my fancy a bit, if you want to say it, is I know from my own experience using excuses like I haven't had time, I didn't get around to it, I'm too busy, and then you put that into context of spending anywhere between 14 and 28 hours a week on a phone, it soon sort of hits home as to what's the actual cause behind things not getting done.
Absolutely, and I mean, let's dive into it now. As you say, some people are spending 4 hours a day on their phone, and if you say your work day is an 8 hour, that ends up adding up to somewhere between 20 and 30 weeks a year that could be put into otherwise productive things, being on your phone, staring at the screen.
Yeah, exactly right. And I guess where it comes from is really a place of concern, because the more and more reading I've done into it, the more I'm starting to understand the actual hormonal and chemical effects using our phone can have on us, from everything from smartphone addiction to our sleep habits, to cortisol levels, which is our stress hormone. So all those things are actually having an effect on us. So it's not just the productivity side of things, of losing that much time every week and every year, which could be put towards a better cause, but it's also the effect it's taking on our body and how that affects our overall health. So everything from not being able to lose weight, from not getting a good night's sleep, to being lethargic, to not being motivated, all those types of things are being contributed to based on the 2 to 4 hours people are spending on their phone.
And this is such an interesting field, guys. When I put my pharmacy hat on, and we've done a lot on mental health on the channel in the past, when we went through uni, there was no talk about this being a possible cause for depression or anxiety or anything like that. And I think it's a big one of the issues these days. But so, mate, before we jump into the points and talk about your findings, how did you collect this data?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I just did it via Insta story poll. So there were 7 different questions I asked, everything from how people feel after using social media to the amount of time that they spend on there. And after digesting the results 24 hours later, it painted a pretty significant picture as to the effects people just felt using it, rather than digging deeper down to say, well, what are the short, medium, and long-term effects of spending that much time on someone's phone, which we'll be able to see on the screen as far as the results that were obtained from the 110 people that completed each of the polls.
Fantastic. Let's dive into these areas, the 7 key areas that you want to focus on. So that first one being smartphone addiction.
Yeah, so smartphone addiction, it's an actual thing. So there's a particular Dr. Robert Lustig, who's a pediatric endocrinologist. I think that's how you pronounce it. So he's a doctor that I've read a fair bit of his material with, and pretty much what he associates social media use with is similar effects to what alcohol, smoking, narcotics, gambling, and porn use does, and that's the release of dopamine inside our mind. So the way that he puts dopamine is like a pleasure hormone. So when we do something, it gives us a short-term hit of dopamine, makes us feel good about ourselves, but continually going back to that same source, that's what creates the addiction. And that's where smartphone use comes back to, whether it's friend requests, notifications, likes, follows, whatever it is. Each time we go back and we've got a notification, that's what submits one of those requests for some dopamine, and overstimulates our brain, and to the extent of it can actually create damage to cells within our brain.
And this isn't a coincidence, guys. Facebook and Instagram know that you love that little notification, that little sound, and they want you to spend time. They get paid money by having eyeballs on their app.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's the whole point of notifications. And one of the pieces of advice that I give people is switch them off. Every notification is just the app and its owner trying to get you back onto their platform so they can put more content or advertising content in front of you, because ultimately that's how they make their money. And I guess one of the points Dr. Lustig makes is a lot of people don't necessarily understand that they're addicted. They just know that they need something. So the urge of needing to go on their phone to check something without necessarily knowing what it was. And it's when wants become needs, that's a sign of addiction. And a couple of signs is not being able to concentrate at work, with the focus being on, I need to go on my phone for whatever reason. When they're around family or friends, they're thinking about their phone rather than the conversation that they're having. And as I said, it's a similar process to what shopping, porn, video games, all those things have, react to the brain the same way.
Yeah, and we might loop around at the end, guys, and talk about how you can fix this or the possible solutions. But the second point there was stress caused by smartphone use.
Yeah. So Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, so he's an author of a book I've been reading, The 4-Pillar Plan, which, putting that in the simplest form, is the more simple, less complex we make our lives, the happier and healthier we can be. And one of the main points out of that is that the effects smartphone use has on our stress levels, and in particular cortisol, which is our stress hormone. So again, the notifications that we get, the thoughts of texts, phone calls, emails, Instagram messages, Facebook messages, whatever it is, the thought of them needing to be responded to puts us in a constant state of stress and fear. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the flight or fight theory before. Yeah. So thinking about caveman time, they've got a saber-toothed tiger in front of them. The immediate response is cortisol level goes up, gives them an extra boost of energy, and the caveman's thinking, am I going to fight this thing or I'm going to run? And pretty much what Dr. Chatterjee's saying is our lives are under this constant state of fight or flight because of the way technology, in particular smartphones, has on us, by creating this sense of we're under constant pressure of emails, texts, phone calls.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. We were talking about this. I actually did a pregnancy class on the weekend, mate. We were expecting our first one, and they were talking about this very thing for women in labour. And if they're stressed or anxious, their body, the parasympathetic nervous system that needs to do its thing and function, it won't be able to use those systems properly. If you're too stressed, if you've got too much adrenaline and cortisol, the woman won't go into labour. And this is the same sort of thing. If you're stressed every day, your body is not functioning the way it should do.
Yeah, exactly right. And two things to add to that. So Dr. Lustig, from the previous point, pretty much what he's saying is notifications on our phones are training our brains to be in a constant state of stress and fear by establishing a new stress-fear memory pathway. So just the thought that our phone's in the pocket, and there's notifications that we need to respond to, can heighten that case of stress and the sense of fear as well. Yeah. And I guess from the game I'm in the gym, health and fitness game, is from a weight loss perspective, elevated or constantly elevated cortisol levels can act in two ways. For some people, it will strip the weight off them, as far as it will reduce quickly. I'd say that's for the minority. And for the majority of people, it will make losing any excess weight impossible, because as you said, when cortisol levels are up, our body just can't behave and act the way that it was designed to do, because we weren't designed to have cortisol levels up for the entire day.
Yeah, I mean, we could go down this rabbit hole. I love talking about this stuff. People that have certain immune conditions that require them to take those steroids in a tablet form, it suppresses their immune system. So even little things like being stressed all the time can make you more likely to get sick. And all these sort of things are connected, and people just don't realize it.
Yeah, exactly right. And I guess it's one of those things where we see phones and technology as part of our days, and like they're becoming more and more part of our days. But it's to say there's eventually going to be a breaking point. And I think where part of this article was coming from is that I think if we look at the mental health, the anxiety, the stress levels, and then also the obesity rates, things are already at breaking point. They're at a stress point where something bad is going to happen. And we're not taking into consideration what role is technology having on those things.
Yeah. We've spoken about this next point a little bit already, I think. Sleep quality. If you're stressed, it's hard to get into that natural rhythm, but there's also a few other effects we found.
Yeah, definitely. So again, being in the health and fitness game, like sleep, we say is king. If you get a good night's sleep, you're more likely to repair, recover. It's going to allow you to come back into the gym more energetic, ready to perform, train harder, get better results. For sleep quality to occur as part of our natural circadian rhythm, melatonin needs to be released over night time, which is what makes us drowsy, makes us go to sleep and get a deeper state of sleep. But where technology and our smart devices come into that, the blue light that's emitted from the screens can actually affect and delay the release of melatonin, not allowing us to get the deep sleep that we require. And that's where you think of particularly people at the night time, they're in bed, the last thing they're doing is using their phone, checking up on their emails, messages, and social media, preventing themselves from getting a good night's sleep. And again, being in the gym game, the amount of people where I ask them, how's your eating? How's your sleeping? Sleeping's always, I sleep like not very well. You start looking at their habits around bedtime and you soon find out that's one of the major components to it.
Yeah, and I know I have to work late sometimes, and I only recently found out that even my desktop computer has that night mode, guys. So your phone and your laptops, your desktops, put them on that night mode that blocks out that blue light. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you a point, Nug, and that is, so I've got my phone constantly on night shift, but there's 1 minute per day, 7:59 a.m. to 8 a.m., because you can't have it on 24 hours, where it will go back to normal mode, where the blue light comes out. I did it this morning for a test. If you just allow yourself to look at that screen, so if it's been on night shift for 24 hours and you look at it during that 1 minute, you can feel the stimulation it has on your brain. Like, and for me, it gives me an immediate headache because of the effect that it has on me. And then if you think of people haven't got night shift mode on, 4 hours a day they're spending on their phone, 28 hours a week, you can guarantee this person's not getting quality sleep, and you can guarantee their health is suffering because of it.
Even if it's just 1 hour a day, if it's that hour you're watching Netflix in bed before you're trying to go to sleep, you're not going to be able to fall asleep naturally. So productivity probably leads into a bad night's sleep, mate. That was the next point.
Yeah, well, I guess the bad night's sleep from an energy and mood perspective is one thing. But again, when you start thinking about the amount of hours that we're talking about, so if someone's spending between 1 and 2 hours a day, that's 7 to 14 hours per week, 28 to 56 hours per month. This is where it hurts, 364 to 728 hours per year. And if you put that into some terms of, well, what does that look like from a working week perspective? For someone spending 1 hour a day, that's 9 hours of full-time work each year spent on their phone. Someone spending 2 hours, it's 18 weeks each year on the phone. 3 hours is 27 weeks each year. And 4 hours per day are spending the equivalent of 33 full-time working weeks on their phone each year. If you think of, if you were able to have, so that's over half a year, full-time work spent on the phone, what you could do with that time. There's significant things. Someone could build a business, someone could write a book, someone could do a hell of a lot of volunteering. So many more valuable things could be done with that time.
Yeah, and a lot of people do want to have that side hustle these days, even if it's just a passion or a second source of income, so that time is there. The purpose of social media, can this be used healthfully, or what were your findings there?
I think so. Like, if you like, I used the analogy when I first signed up for Facebook, that the intention of me using it then was to keep in contact with friends, to be able to communicate with them and keep up to date with anything that's happening in their life, which I still do. Like you and I, we stay in touch via Facebook. Yeah. When I signed up to Instagram, I originally had some reluctance around it to say, well, what can I actually take photos of and share that people will actually be interested in? And I guess I use both platforms now to communicate, whether it's a personal message about something that's going on in my own life, congratulating somebody, or keeping people up to date with what's happening in Gript. That's what I now use it for. So I still think when used with a positive intention and with purpose, I think they can be great platforms. But it's to say, weighing up, well, what are the positives and what are the negatives, and what one's outweighing the other, and is too much time being spent in the negative space.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that come out as one of the feedback points from the survey was that people use their smart devices and Instagram and whatever else to learn from. And one of the points that Dr. Lustig come out was just how poor a learning experience it is coming from a smart device, and that they've shown people who read information in a book can take on a lot more complex information with a deeper comprehension, engaging more conceptual thinking. So what he's saying is that trying to learn on a smart device prevents your ability to think deeply because of the way the data is collected in our frontal cortex in our brain, where it can actually get to a point where we're trying to take on too much information too quickly, and then our brain starts to wanting to shut down, which prevents us from being able to learn.
Which is very interesting, seeing as the majority of our business is trying to deliver education on social media platforms. But exactly right. The psychology behind social media, we did touch on this a little bit already. We know that the big boys in Facebook and what they know how this is working. But what did you find?
I guess I was thinking more from an individual basis with this, and I know from my own experience that when I'm posting things that might be training related or nutrition related, I'm posting them, one, to be informative, to give people some ideas as to things that they could be doing to improve their life, improve their quality of living. But underlying that, I use it to show that what we do in Gript and what I do myself is at a superior level, that we're experts at what we do. And the reason I want to be seen as superior is to attract new clients to what we do, and to make our competitors look inferior, if that makes sense. I mean it with good intention, but again, that's still my intention. And I think with the psychology of social media, and I've done a bit of reading into Adlerian theory, which is a theory around psychology, is that at different stages people feel inferior or are made to feel inferior, and they choose to feel inferior, and others choose to want to be superior. And a lot of those inferior and superiority complexes, particularly superior ones, can come from an inferiority complex, the need to want to feel better, to make them feel better about themselves. So what my point I was trying to make there is that, why do people actually post? Are they posting to inform, to educate, to motivate, to inspire? Or are they posting the best parts of their life to make people feel inferior about them by making their lifestyle out to be better?
Yeah.
And I think my own personal opinion on that is a lot of the posts about I'm living the high life and the dream life, trying to make people envious, it's all built on a fake construct. And 100%. For me, the people doing that, it's not healthy for them, short or long term, because they're trying to paint a picture that isn't necessarily true.
Yeah, and I mean, someone like Gary Vee talks about this a lot. All these people that want to be seen as living this rich, high life, and they're often ones that aren't the happiest, or that their business isn't going as well as they're portraying. And as you said, being superior doesn't come from a nasty place or an arrogant place. You can show someone that, hey, I want to pass on what I've learned in an educational manner to you, whether it's about cryptocurrency or about health and fitness, showing someone that you are well educated and that you want to help them learn.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And I guess what that then starts creating is the audience, so the person who's following that person, then starts making comparisons with their own life to say, well, why aren't I going on the holiday? Why aren't I driving the new car? Why aren't I buying a new home? Why haven't I found my dream partner? And that just compounds the actual issue, because then you've got the person on the end, or the thousands or millions of people on the end. And probably the big one in our industry is, why does my body not look like that? Then you're creating body image issues because the comparisons are starting to be made. And when people are spending 2 to 4 hours a day in that state, it can't possibly have a positive effect on them. And I think that's then what creates the the negativity, the criticism, and some of the hate that you see on social media is because people were made to feel inferior for such a long period of time. They get to a breaking point. And if you just imagine if that negativity, criticism, and hate was changed into, well, actually, that person's working their ass off. Well done for being on a holiday. I hope they're having the best time of their life. Instead of hating on them because they're in really good condition, saying, look, it looks like you've worked really hard for that. Your body's looking fantastic. Well done. Keep it up. So instead of using the negative language, use the positive language, and just the effect that could have on a couple of the social media platforms would be huge.
We've had people go full circle that used to give us a pretty hard time that have ended up coming in and being one of our members and being friends with us and saying that they were going through hard parts in their own lives and trying to take it out on someone else. And as you say, then they end up being happy for us and wanting to learn of us, and now we're friends. So it's great to hear that as well.
Yeah, and it is something that we've seen as well, where people may feel some sides of envy, and it puts them off wanting to come in, and then eventually they say, well, actually, these guys are the real deal. They're consistent in what they do. They're committed to what they're doing. They want to educate and improve what their clients are doing. I'm actually on these guys' side now. So similar to the story what you've just mentioned there as well.
So safe use of social media to finish off here, mate.
So this one is, so I live around Chapel Street in South Yarra, one of the busiest areas in Melbourne. And I guess it's a pet hate of mine. And that is you're driving along one of the busiest strips in Melbourne, and you've got someone with their headphones in, head down looking at their phone, walking across 2 lanes of traffic. Could be bikes, could be other pedestrians, could be trams. And there's just no awareness as to anyone there. And I guess what's driving that is the distraction for whatever's happening on their phone, whether it's notifications, text messages, emails, whatever, is more important to them than their own safety and the safety of others. And then you might see the gesture of a tram's beeping their horn at them, and someone might pop their hand up and say, oh, sorry, as to say, well, how actual sorry are you? Because what would happen if that tram hit you? What would happen if that tram killed you? The effect it's going to have on you, your family, your friends, the tram driver, everyone on the tram that's just witnessed it. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking about whatever distraction is on their phone and attending to that instead of the safety of them and the well-being of others around them.
Yeah. So any final thoughts, mate, for people, wrapping it all up? What would you be your take-home messages?
Yeah, so the couple of points that I put in there was first understanding exactly how much time people were spending on there. So as I said, I did it using the Moment app, which is available via the App Store. But iPhones now do have the screen time tool in settings, which does break down as to how people are using their phone and how long for. Yeah. So I think that's the first point of addressing any problem is understanding, well, what's the situation, acknowledging what that is, and then moving forward with action. Having phone-free days. So on a Sunday, I leave my phone at home. Me and my partner, Mina, will go out for the rest of the day, and I won't access my phone at all. And I guess for me, it's just demonstrating to myself that I don't need it. I don't need my phone to survive. I can last a day without it. I think it sort of helps break down the addictiveness of the phone for other people as well by showing themselves that they don't need to use it. Third one's avoid mindless scrolling. So it might sound simple, but when you're sitting at the table eating lunch, breakfast or dinner, phone doesn't need to be involved. Phone can be put on the kitchen bench, and it's a matter of just sitting there, enjoying what you're eating and sort of having a connection with your food rather than just shoving it down as quickly as possible and scrolling, as to say, well, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to nourish my body, I've cooked a meal for myself, I'm going to sit here and enjoy it. Yeah. Same thing could be said about when going to the toilet. Instead of taking your phone in there and scrolling mindlessly on the toilet, just go to the toilet. As simple as that. One we spoke about earlier is night shift mode on phone, and then flux mode on MacBooks for people that use MacBooks. Put them on permanently. Like I've got my phone and my Mac on those two things permanently because I don't want to have any blue light stimulating my mind whatsoever. There's the screen time app on iPhones now allows start and finish time. So when your phone switches off and you can't access it anymore in morning and night. For me, I don't start using my phone until 8 a.m. of a morning unless it's an emergency, and I put my phone down at 8 p.m. of a night. And I guess speaking from myself, so I've run different businesses before. I've been in banking, I've been in call centres where I've managed 15 to 20 people at times. It doesn't impress me, people responding to emails at 6 a.m. or 10 p.m. at night. It actually is a bigger concern for me that they're not getting their work done in the allocated time, which would raise questions around their productivity. And the other aspect of it, now knowing the effects it has on people's health and well-being, I prefer to know that my team aren't accessing their phone until after 8 a.m. so they can start their way in a better manner, which is going to allow them to have a better day, and they can switch off from work when they walk out the door each night as well.
Awesome.
And the other one I was going to say was exchange scrolling for another activity. So for me, instead of, I used to get home, jump on the couch, scroll, sort of talk to my partner at the same time, whereas now I'll come in, put my bag down, phone down, I'll have a conversation with Mina about how her day was. I'll sit down and watch the news on ABC for an hour, so I'm updated with what's happening in Australia and around the world. And then at 9:30, I'll take myself to bed. I'll read my book for 30 minutes, and that's my way of easing my way out of the day.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you joining us today, mate. We're probably going to have you back on to talk about health and other topics in the future, but thanks so much for that.
It's been a pleasure, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers.